Today we're going to look at a really interesting and I think useful concept called antifragility. Antifragility is a concept that was created by Nassim Nicholas Taleb, an American Lebanese writer. Why would we say antifragile instead of just saying robust or resilient? He actually gives a really good explanation of this. Antifragility is specifically a system or a person or an individual organization that responds to stress, to chaos, to adversity by thriving. Whereas a system or a person or an organization that is fragile responds to the same stress, the same chaos, the same variability, the same adversity by falling apart in the face of these things. So antifragility is the tendency of a system or an individual to thrive in the face of adversity. Nassim Nicholas Taleb defines it thus. Simply, antifragility is defined as a convex response to a stressor or source of harm for some range of variation, leading to a positive sensitivity to an increase in volatility or variability, stress, dispersion of outcomes, or uncertainty. Likewise, fragility is defined as a concave sensitivity to stresses, leading to a negative sensitivity to an increase in volatility. The relation between fragility, convexity, and sensitivity to disorder is mathematical, obtained by theorem, not derived from empirical data mining or some historical narrative. It is a priori. In his book on antifragility, Taleb stresses the difference between antifragile and robust and resilient. Resiliency is the ability to recover from failure, and robustness is the ability to resist failure. Antifragility, however, he writes, is beyond resilience or robustness. The resilient resists shocks and stays the same. The antifragile gets better. This is an important distinction. As a footnote to the issue of emotion, I don't think identifying and discussing the specific emotions they experienced that were felt during a traumatic experience are in themselves curative. In fact, they could probably be re-traumatizing. But we know that the hippocampus can shrink as a result of exposure to stress. And so many people with PTSD actually have a hippocampus that, when measured, has shrunk in its volume. What does the hippocampus do? To the best of the neurobiologists' understanding, it seems to be related to memory and emotion, and possibly the way in which we assign emotions to memory. If we can't assign emotions to memory properly, we lose our ability to access memories altogether. So from my point of view, when I'm asking people to do the emotional literacy exercises and identify to a nuance what it is that they felt about something, it's not so much because that in and of itself is curative in relation to a traumatic incident. It's more that your ability to identify to a nuance what your emotions are may help you to process and grieve that which has been experienced. A thriving response to pain and to trauma, nothing less than an anti-fragile response. If you think, evolutionarily, we are anti-fragile as Taleb has defined it. Generally speaking, as a species, rather than shrinking in the face of trauma and stress, we have thrived in the face of trauma and stress. A species that shrank, a species that fell apart in the face of chaos, would have already gone extinct, presumably. So what can we take from this? I think there are three key elements that I want to suggest that are extremely important for encouraging post-traumatic growth in ourselves and being anti-fragile. One, your spirituality. When we say spirituality, don't get put off. It doesn't necessarily mean religion, but you must be able to ask and answer very large philosophical questions like, what is the nature of reality? How should a human being live their life? What is the purpose of life? Not that you can answer them with finality and create your own dogma. You'll never answer these questions with finality. None of us really know, but that you can at least attempt to answer them, that you can kick the ball around intellectually and emotionally and philosophically and get used to these concepts. It's extremely important. The story of our lives, the story of reality, is going to directly impact the story of how this trauma could take place. Recently, in conversation with a US Navy chaplain, I was talking to Brian Payne. We were talking about the concept, because he's a chaplain, he's helping people overcome PTSD, sometimes, but not always, from a religious perspective and from a Christian perspective, the concept of moral injury. How much of PTSD is moral injury? Very, very interesting question. We are intrinsically moral creatures. We may even be intrinsically religious creatures, so we must address this key issue. The other thing is social support. We need a social support network. We are tribal creatures. We are not individuals. We become sick when we are isolated. So we need that social support. And then there is this all important element of acceptance. I suggest you look up Marsha Linehan and dialectical behavioral therapy and her concept of radical acceptance. Whatever it is that has happened, radically accept the totality of it, at least for now. And then, perhaps, as a footnote, the ability to explore and experience our emotions and our emotional literacy. Not from the old model, not because I believe that you reliving the emotional experience has a curative effect. I don't think it does. I think the risk is high that it could be re-traumatizing. But that if you have a strong capacity to identify and name your emotions to a nuance, that could have be of positive benefit and have a positive effect on your memory and your capacity to process emotions. One of the things that happens in post-traumatic stress is the hypothalamus shrinks in relation to its volume. It actually gets physically smaller. That can grow back and does grow back over time and with healing, and the volume re-increases. They're not 100% sure, the old neurobiologists, exactly what the hypothalamus does, but there is a strong indication that it relates to memory, emotion, and the capacity to assign emotion to memory. So when we do emotional literacy exercises, where we're asking ourselves the questions, how did that make me feel? What emotions came up when I experienced this or that, or when I think about the future? There is a chance that that could actually be a form of exercising the hypothalamus. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and for your attention, and I look forward to speaking to you again next time. Cheers. Okay, folks, the new course, Unplug from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse, is out now, and if you're interested in finding out more about that, please click the link below.